Marcus had been protecting the royal family for 8 years. His job was simple but serious. Watch for danger, stay alert, and keep the palace safe. He knew every corner of the grand building, every servant's face, and every sound that belonged there. The palace was always busy during the day. Servants rushed around carrying trays, cleaning rooms, and preparing meals. Children's laughter often filled the halls as the royal family went about their daily lives. Marcus loved this part of his job, seeing a happy family living peacefully under his protection. But lately something felt different. As an experienced guard, Marcus had learned to trust his instincts. Small details that others might miss caught his attention. A door left slightly open when it should be closed. Footsteps in the hallway at unusual hours. Hushed conversations that stopped when he walked by. The change started about 3 months ago when Lord Edmund married into the royal family. He seemed like a perfect gentleman, well-dressed, polite, and charming to everyone he met. The wedding was beautiful, and everyone celebrated the new addition to their family. Lord Edmund brought his 8-year-old daughter Sarah from his previous marriage. Sarah was a quiet child with big brown eyes and curly hair. She always wore pretty dresses and walked softly through the palace halls. At first, Marcus thought she was just shy, adjusting to her new home and new family. Many children would need time to feel comfortable in such a big, formal place. However, Marcus began noticing things about Sarah that worried him. She flinched when adults raised their voices, even during normal conversations. She always stayed close to walls when walking, as if trying to make herself invisible. Most concerning was how she reacted around her stepfather. Whenever Lord Edmund entered a room, Sarah would immediately stop whatever she was doing. Her shoulders would tense up, and she would look down at the floor. She never ran to hug him or smiled when he spoke to her, like most children do with loving parents. Instead, she seemed to shrink into herself. Marcus had seen enough troubled children in his years of service to recognize the signs. Something was wrong, but he needed to be careful. Accusations against a royal family member required solid proof, not just suspicions from a guard. During his night shifts, Marcus started paying more attention to the sounds coming from the family wing. The palace was usually quiet after 10 in the evening, making it easier to hear unusual noises. Most nights were peaceful, but sometimes he heard things that made his blood run cold. Soft crying came from Sarah's room on several occasions. It wasn't the normal crying of a homesick child. It was the desperate, muffled sobs of someone trying very hard not to be heard. Marcus would stand outside her door, listening carefully, wanting to help but knowing he couldn't just burst in without permission. One particular night changed everything for Marcus. He was making his usual rounds when he heard footsteps in the hallway leading to Sarah's room. The steps were heavy and deliberate, definitely an adult walking with purpose. Marcus quietly moved closer to investigate. Through a crack in the door, he saw Lord Edmund entering Sarah's bedroom. The child was already in bed, pretending to sleep, but Marcus could see her small body trembling under the covers. Lord Edmund closed the door behind him, and Marcus heard the soft click of a lock being turned. Marcus felt his heart racing. Every instinct told him something terrible was about to happen, but his training also reminded him to be absolutely certain before taking action. He positioned himself where he could hear clearly while staying hidden in the shadows. What he heard next confirmed his worst fears. Lord Edmund's voice was low and threatening, telling Sarah to be quiet and not cause any trouble. Sarah's small voice pleaded softly, asking to be left alone. Then came the sounds that no child should ever have to make. Quiet whimpering and desperate whispers of, "Please stop." Marcus had heard enough. His duty was to protect everyone in the palace, especially those who couldn't protect themselves. An innocent child was being hurt by someone who was supposed to love and care for her. This was exactly the kind of danger he had sworn to stop. The experienced guard knew he had to act quickly but smartly. Rushing in without a plan could make things worse for Sarah, or allow Lord Edmund to escape punishment. Marcus needed evidence that would convince the royal court and ensure justice would be served. He also knew that Sarah would need immediate protection and care. A child suffering such abuse would be scared, confused, and unlikely to trust anyone easily. Marcus would need to be gentle and patient while also being strong enough to stop a dangerous man. As Marcus stood in the dark hallway, listening to a child's muffled cries for help, he made a decision that would change several lives forever. His next move had to be perfect. for Sarah's safety, for justice, and for his own conscience. The time for watching and waiting was over. Marcus knew he needed proof before making any accusations. His word alone might not be enough against a member of the royal family, especially someone as charming and well-connected as Lord Edmund. The guard had to be smart about gathering evidence while protecting Sarah from further harm. The next morning, Marcus began his careful investigation. He started by talking to other palace staff, asking casual questions about the new family dynamics. Most servants spoke positively about Lord Edmund, praising his politeness and generous tips, but Marcus noticed they never mentioned seeing him interact warmly with Sarah. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper, provided the first real clue. She had been working at the palace for 20 years and knew every family's habits. During a quiet moment, she confided in Marcus about her concerns. "That poor little girl barely eats anymore," Mrs. Henderson whispered while folding laundry. "She used to have such a healthy appetite when she first arrived. Now she just pushes food around her plate and asks to be excused early from every meal." Marcus learned that Sarah's behavior had changed dramatically over the past month. She no longer played with the other children who visited the palace. She stopped asking for bedtime stories and rarely spoke unless directly questioned. The happy, curious child who had arrived 3 months ago seemed to be disappearing. The guard also discovered that Lord Edmund had requested Sarah's room be moved to a more isolated part of the palace wing. He claimed it was to give her more privacy and quiet space to adjust to her new life. However, Marcus realized this location made it much harder for anyone to hear if Sarah called for help. During his day shift, Marcus began observing Lord Edmund more closely. The man was indeed charming and sociable with adults, but his behavior around Sarah was completely different. He would place his hands on her shoulders in a way that made her visibly uncomfortable. His smiles toward her seemed forced and cold, nothing like the genuine warmth he showed to other family members. Most disturbing was how Lord Edmund controlled Sarah's daily activities. He insisted on personally walking her to and from her room, claiming he wanted to spend quality time with his stepdaughter. He also discouraged her from forming friendships with palace staff or other children, saying she needed to focus on her studies and royal etiquette. Marcus noticed that Sarah never looked directly at her stepfather. When Lord Edmund spoke to her, she would nod silently while staring at the floor. Her responses were always brief and quiet, as if she was afraid of saying the wrong thing. This was not normal behavior for a healthy child-parent relationship. The guard decided to test his theory by creating opportunities to interact with Sarah alone. During one afternoon, he found her sitting quietly in the palace garden, looking sad and lost. Marcus approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "Hello, Miss Sarah," he said gently, keeping his distance. "That's a very pretty flower you're looking at." Sarah glanced up briefly, then immediately looked away. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus sat down on a nearby bench, maintaining a safe distance. "I used to have a little sister about your age," he said casually. "She loved picking flowers and making bouquets for our mother." This seemed to catch Sarah's interest. She looked up slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What was her name?" she asked softly. "Emma," Marcus replied with a gentle smile. "She had curly hair just like yours. She was always getting into harmless trouble, climbing trees, chasing butterflies, laughing too loud during serious moments. For the first time, Sarah almost smiled. "I used to climb trees at my old house," she admitted quietly. "My mama said I was part monkey." Marcus felt his heart break at the past tense Sarah used when talking about happier times. "Do you miss your old house?" he asked carefully. Sarah's face immediately changed. The brief moment of openness disappeared, replaced by fear and anxiety. "I'm not supposed to talk about that," she whispered, glancing around nervously as if someone might be listening. "It's okay," Marcus assured her. "Everyone misses places and people that made them happy. That's perfectly normal." But Sarah was already standing up, backing away from the conversation. "I should go back inside," she said hurriedly. "Lord Edmund doesn't like when I stay outside too long." As Marcus watched her hurry toward the palace, he felt angry and determined. The child was clearly living in fear, carefully monitoring her own behavior to avoid upsetting her stepfather. This level of anxiety and control was not normal discipline. It was abuse. That evening, Marcus positioned himself strategically near Sarah's room again. He had borrowed a small recording device from the palace security office, claiming he needed it to document suspicious noises he had been hearing. The device was small enough to hide easily and sensitive enough to pick up conversations through doors. Around 10:30, Marcus heard the familiar heavy footsteps approaching Sarah's room. Lord Edmund walked directly to her door and knocked softly. "Sarah, sweetheart, it's time for our special talk," he called in a voice that sounded caring to anyone who didn't know better. Marcus heard the door open and close, followed by the click of the lock. He quickly activated the recording device and moved as close as he dared to the door. What he heard over the next 20 minutes would haunt him forever, but it also gave him exactly the evidence he needed. Lord Edmund's true personality emerged once they were alone. His voice became cold and threatening as he told Sarah exactly what he expected from her. The child's terrified responses and desperate pleas for him to stop provided clear proof of ongoing abuse. Marcus had everything he needed to protect Sarah and expose Lord Edmund. Now came the most dangerous part: confronting the abuser and ensuring Sarah's immediate safety without giving Lord Edmund a chance to hurt her further or escape justice. With solid evidence recorded, Marcus faced the most critical decision of his career. He could report to his superior officers and follow official protocol, but that would take time that Sarah didn't have. Every night Lord Edmund remained free was another night of potential harm to an innocent child. Marcus chose to act immediately. His plan was risky but necessary. He would confront Lord Edmund directly while the man was still in Sarah's room, catching him in the act and preventing any chance of denial or escape. The recording device would provide backup evidence if needed. As the disturbing sounds continued from Sarah's room, Marcus checked his equipment one final time. His radio was set to emergency frequency, ready to call for backup. His master key would give him instant access to any locked door in the palace. Most importantly, his determination to protect a defenseless child gave him the courage to face whatever consequences might follow. Marcus moved silently to Sarah's door. Through the keyhole he could see Lord Edmund standing over the child's bed, his shadow falling across her small form. Sarah's quiet whimpering confirmed that the abuse was actively happening. Marcus had seen and heard enough. Without warning, Marcus used his master key and burst through the door. "Step away from the child immediately," he commanded in his strongest authoritative voice. Lord Edmund spun around, his face showing shock, anger, and fear all at once. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" he demanded, quickly trying to compose himself and return to his charming public persona. "I was simply tucking my stepdaughter into bed." But Marcus had positioned himself between Lord Edmund and Sarah, creating a protective barrier. The child was curled up in her bed, shaking and crying silently. Her torn nightgown and terrified expression told the real story of what had been happening. "I've been listening for the past 20 minutes, Marcus said firmly, holding up the recording device. "I have everything documented. Your tucking in included threatening this child and forcing her to endure things no child should ever experience." Lord Edmund's mask of respectability began to crack. "You have no authority to spy on a member of this family," he hissed. "Do you realize what you're accusing me of? I could have you thrown in prison for this." Marcus remained calm and focused. "My authority comes from my sworn duty to protect everyone in this palace, especially those who cannot protect themselves. What I'm accusing you of is exactly what I witnessed: the systematic abuse of your stepdaughter." During this confrontation, Sarah had been watching with wide, frightened eyes. She seemed unable to believe that someone was actually standing up for her, defending her against the person who had been hurting her for weeks. Lord Edmund tried a different approach, switching to manipulation and false concern. "Marcus, you're clearly misunderstanding the situation," he said in a soothing voice. "Sarah has been having nightmares and behavioral problems since her mother's death. I was simply trying to comfort her and establish some necessary discipline." But Marcus had heard too much to be fooled by lies. "Comfort doesn't involve threats and tears," he replied. "Discipline doesn't require locked doors and terrified silence. What you've been doing to this child is abuse, pure and simple." Realizing his words weren't working, Lord Edmund's true nature fully emerged. His face twisted with rage as he dropped all pretense of being a caring stepfather. "That little brat has been nothing but trouble since I married her mother," he snarled. "She needed to learn respect and obedience." Marcus felt his anger rising at hearing Sarah described so cruelly. but he maintained his professional composure. What she needed was protection and care, which you failed to provide. Instead, you chose to hurt and terrorize her. Lord Edmund suddenly lunged toward the door, trying to push past Marcus and escape, but the experienced guard was ready for this move. He quickly blocked the exit and activated his radio, calling for immediate backup. Security emergency in the East Wing, Sarah's room. Marcus spoke clearly into his radio. Need immediate assistance in Child Protective Services. Suspect in custody. Within minutes, the sound of running footsteps echoed through the hallway as other guards responded to Marcus's call. Lord Edmund realized his situation was hopeless as armed officers surrounded the room. His carefully constructed life of respectability was crumbling around him. Meanwhile, Marcus approached Sarah's bed slowly and gently. "You're safe now," he told her softly. "No one is going to hurt you anymore. These other guards are here to help, and we're going to make sure you're protected." Sarah looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. But for the first time in months, they weren't tears of fear and pain. They were tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with emotion. As backup guards secured Lord Edmund, Marcus wrapped a blanket around Sarah's shoulders and sat beside her bed. "You were very brave," he told her gently. "None of this was your fault, and you don't have to be afraid anymore." The confrontation was over, but Marcus knew this was just the beginning of a long process to ensure justice and help Sarah heal from her traumatic experience. The immediate danger had passed, but there would be investigations, legal proceedings, and most importantly, ongoing care for a child who had endured far too much. Within an hour, the palace was filled with officials investigating the situation. The head of palace security, Detective Morrison, arrived to take statements and examine the evidence. Child Protective Services sent their most experienced counselor, Dr. Patricia Wells, to assess Sarah's condition and immediate needs. Lord Edmund was escorted away in handcuffs, still protesting his innocence and demanding to speak with lawyers. His threats and angry outbursts during the arrest only confirmed what Marcus had already documented. The man's true character was finally visible to everyone present. Sarah remained in her room with Dr. Wells, who specialized in helping children who had experienced trauma. The counselor spoke quietly with Sarah, explaining what would happen next and assuring her that she was safe. Marcus waited outside, ready to provide any assistance or testimony needed. Detective Morrison reviewed Marcus's recording carefully, listening to the clear evidence of Lord Edmund's abuse. The guard had also documented his observations over the past weeks, creating a detailed timeline of Sarah's changing behavior and Lord Edmund's suspicious actions. "This is excellent police work," Detective Morrison told Marcus. "Your careful documentation and quick thinking likely prevented much worse harm to this child. The evidence you've gathered will be crucial for prosecution." The palace physician, Dr. Roberts, arrived to examine Sarah and document any physical evidence of abuse. Dr. Wells stayed with Sarah throughout the examination, providing comfort and explaining each step of the process. The medical evidence would support the audio recording and witness testimony. As dawn approached, the immediate crisis was handled, but Sarah's long-term care became the priority. The royal family was awakened and informed of the situation. Queen Elizabeth was horrified to learn what had been happening under her own roof, to a child she had welcomed as family. "How did we miss this?" the Queen asked Dr. Wells. "We pride ourselves on protecting everyone in this palace, especially children. How could we have failed Sarah so completely?" Dr. Wells explained that abusers like Lord Edmund are often skilled at hiding their true nature. He presented himself as a loving stepfather in public while carefully controlling and isolating Sarah in private. This type of manipulation is unfortunately common, and children often don't report abuse because they've been threatened or made to feel responsible. The Queen immediately arranged for Sarah to receive the best possible care and support. A team of child psychologists, trauma specialists, and trusted caregivers would help Sarah begin healing from her ordeal. The palace would also implement new safety protocols to prevent similar situations in the future. Marcus was commended for his actions and attention to detail. His willingness to risk his career and reputation to protect a child demonstrated exactly the kind of integrity and dedication the royal family valued in their security staff. However, Marcus felt no satisfaction in the recognition. He was simply grateful that Sarah was finally safe. Over the following days, Sarah began to show small signs of recovery. With patient counseling and a safe environment, she started to speak more freely about her experiences. Dr. Wells worked carefully to help Sarah understand that nothing that happened was her fault, and that speaking the truth was the right thing to do. Sarah's testimony, combined with Marcus's evidence and the medical examination, built a strong case against Lord Edmund. Additional investigation revealed that he had a history of concerning behavior that had been overlooked because of his social status and charm. Previous wives had filed complaints that were dismissed or covered up. The legal proceedings moved quickly given the strength of the evidence. Lord Edmund's lawyers attempted to claim misunderstanding and false accusations, but the recording device captured his own words clearly admitting to the abuse. There was no room for denial or manipulation. During the trial preparation, Sarah showed remarkable courage. With support from Dr. Wells and Marcus, she was able to provide clear testimony about what had happened to her. The 8-year-old girl who had been terrorized into silence found her voice and used it to seek justice. Marcus attended every court session, offering silent support to Sarah when she needed to face her abuser in the courtroom. The judge praised both Marcus and Sarah for their bravery in exposing the abuse and ensuring that Lord Edmund could never hurt another child. The trial also revealed the importance of believing children when they try to report abuse, even if they can't articulate exactly what's happening to them. Sarah's changed behavior, loss of appetite, and withdrawn personality had been clear warning signs that needed more attention. Palace staff underwent training to recognize signs of abuse and learn proper reporting procedures. New policies required multiple trusted adults to have regular, private conversations with all children living in or visiting the palace. The goal was to create an environment where children felt safe speaking up if something was wrong. Marcus found himself becoming an advocate for child protection, speaking with other security professionals about the importance of watching for signs of abuse. His experience with Sarah taught him that protecting people sometimes meant looking beyond obvious physical threats to recognize emotional and psychological dangers as well. 6 months after Lord Edmund's arrest, Sarah was a completely different child. With proper care, therapy, and a safe environment, her natural personality began to shine through. She laughed more, asked questions, and slowly started trusting the adults around her. Dr. Wells continued working with Sarah twice weekly, helping her process her trauma and develop healthy coping mechanisms. The counselor was amazed by Sarah's resilience and strength. Many children who experience such abuse struggle for years, but Sarah's young age and the quick intervention had given her a better chance at recovery. Marcus had become something of a hero to Sarah. She would wave enthusiastically whenever she saw him during his rounds, and often asked Dr. Wells if she could speak with the guard who helped me. Their friendship was carefully supervised but clearly beneficial for both of them. The royal family took special interest in Sarah's well-being. Queen Elizabeth personally ensured that Sarah received the finest education, health care, and emotional support available. The child was no longer just a stepdaughter brought into the family. She was now a protected member who would never lack for care or advocacy. At Lord Edmund's trial concluded with a guilty verdict on multiple charges, including child abuse, sexual assault, and endangering the welfare of a minor. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in prison, with mandatory registration as a sex offender upon release. The sentence sent a clear message that abuse of children would face severe consequences, regardless of social status. During the sentencing hearing, Sarah chose to provide a victim impact statement. With Dr. Wells beside her for support, she stood in the courtroom and faced her former abuser directly. Her words were simple but powerful, describing how his actions had hurt her, and expressing hope that no other children would suffer the same treatment. "He made me afraid to sleep, afraid to eat, and afraid to talk," Sarah told the judge clearly. "But Marcus and Dr. Wells taught me that I don't have to be afraid anymore. I hope he learns that hurting children is wrong and never does it again." Marcus watched from the gallery, feeling proud of Sarah's courage and grateful that his actions had led to this moment of justice. The frightened, silent child he had first noticed was now a confident young girl who could advocate for herself and others. The case received significant media attention, highlighting the issue of child abuse in wealthy and powerful families. Many people had assumed that children in privileged environments were automatically safe from harm. But Sarah's story demonstrated that abuse can happen anywhere when adults fail to remain vigilant. Child advocacy organizations use the case to promote education about recognizing signs of abuse and the importance of believing children who report concerning behavior. Marcus was invited to speak at several conferences about the role security personnel can play in child protection. Sarah's biological mother had died 2 years earlier, leaving her without immediate family. The royal family formally adopted Sarah, making her legal status secure and ensuring she would never again be vulnerable to an abusive guardian. The adoption ceremony was small but meaningful, symbolizing Sarah's new beginning. As part of her healing process, Sarah started participating in art therapy and discovered a talent for painting. Her early artwork showed dark themes and frightening images, but gradually became brighter and more hopeful. Dr. Wells used these artistic expressions to gauge Sarah's emotional progress and celebrate her recovery milestones. The palace implemented a comprehensive child protection program based on lessons learned from Sarah's case. All staff received training on recognizing abuse indicators, and new protocols required background checks for anyone seeking to marry into or join the extended royal family. Multiple trusted adults were assigned to maintain relationships with each child in the palace community. Marcus received several commendations for his actions, including recognition from child protection agencies and law enforcement organizations. However, he remained focused on his primary duty of keeping everyone in the palace safe, knowing that vigilance and attention to detail could prevent future tragedies. Sarah began thriving academically and socially as her confidence grew. She made friends with other children who visited the palace and started participating in activities she had avoided during the abuse. Her laughter returned, along with the natural curiosity and playfulness that Lord Edmund had tried to crush. The relationship between Marcus and Sarah evolved into a healthy mentorship. He taught her about personal safety and self-advocacy, while she reminded him why his work protecting others was so important. Their bond demonstrated how trauma survivors can form positive relationships with the people who helped them heal. Dr. Wells noted in her reports that Sarah's recovery was exceptional, largely due to the quick intervention and strong support system that surrounded her. The child's natural resilience, combined with immediate safety and proper treatment, had prevented many of the long-term effects commonly seen in abuse survivors. 2 years later, Sarah had grown into a confident, happy 10-year-old who bore little resemblance to the frightened child Marcus had first rescued. She excelled in her studies, had close friendships with several children her age, and participated eagerly in palace activities and events. The transformation was remarkable to everyone who knew Sarah's story. Her smile was genuine and frequent. Her laughter filled the palace halls, and she approached new experiences with excitement rather than fear. The trauma she had endured would always be part of her history, but it no longer defined her present or limited her future. Marcus continued his duties as a palace guard, but his role had expanded to include special training for security personnel on child protection. He developed protocols that other royal families and high-security facilities adopted to better safeguard vulnerable individuals in their care. Sarah's relationship with Marcus remained special and important to both of them. She would stop to chat with him during his rounds, sharing stories about her lessons, friends, and dreams for the future. Marcus treasured these conversations, seeing in Sarah's happiness the true value of his decision to act when she needed help most. The annual palace security review always highlighted Sarah's case as an example of vigilance and proper response to suspected abuse. New guards learned about the importance of observing behavior changes, trusting instincts, and prioritizing child safety over protocol when immediate action was required. Dr. Wells gradually reduced her sessions with Sarah as the child demonstrated consistent emotional stability and healthy coping skills. Their final session included Sarah creating a thank you card for Marcus, expressing gratitude for his courage in helping her when she couldn't help herself. Sarah's academic achievements impressed her tutors and teachers. She showed particular interest in subjects like psychology and law, perhaps influenced by her experiences with the justice system. Her teachers noted her unusual empathy for classmates who seemed troubled or withdrawn, suggesting she might pursue helping professions as an adult. The royal family celebrated Sarah's progress by planning special activities and trips that she had missed, during the darkest period of her childhood. Queen Elizabeth personally ensured that Sarah experienced the joy and security that every child deserves, making up for the months when fear dominated her daily life. Lord Edmund remained in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 12 years. Reports indicated that he continued to deny responsibility for his actions and showed no remorse for the harm he had caused Sarah. The justice system had removed a dangerous individual from society and protected other potential victims. Sarah began participating in age-appropriate advocacy activities, sharing her story with child protection organizations to help other young people understand that abuse is never their fault, and that speaking up can lead to safety and healing. Her courage in the courtroom had helped convict her abuser, and her continued advocacy helped other children find their voices. Marcus often reflected on that critical night when he heard Sarah's quiet cry for help. His decision to investigate rather than ignore suspicious sounds had changed the trajectory of a child's entire life. The experience reinforced his belief that protecting others required more than just physical security. It demanded emotional intelligence and moral courage. The palace's enhanced child protection policies became a model for other institutions. Regular training sessions, multiple reporting channels, and careful screening of all adults with access to children created a culture where safety was everyone's responsibility, not just the security staff's duty. Sarah's artwork continued to reflect her healing journey. Her paintings now showed bright colors, happy scenes, and hopeful themes. The dark, frightening images from her early therapy sessions had been replaced by depictions of friendship, family, and dreams for the future. As Sarah approached her 11th birthday, she asked if Marcus could attend her party as a special guest, rather than just security personnel on duty. The request demonstrated how completely she had reclaimed her sense of agency and control over her environment. She could now invite people she trusted to celebrate important moments in her life. The birthday party was a joyful celebration attended by Sarah's friends, adoptive family, Dr. Wells, and of course Marcus. Watching Sarah laugh and play with other children, surrounded by people who loved and protected her, Marcus felt the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing his actions had made a permanent positive difference in someone's life. Years later, Marcus would tell new guards that the most important part of their job wasn't preventing dramatic attacks or high-profile threats. It was paying attention to the quiet signs that someone needed help, having the courage to act when action was required, and never forgetting that their duty was to protect all people, especially those who couldn't protect themselves. Sarah's story became a testament to the power of intervention, the importance of believing children, and the possibility of healing even after severe trauma. Her recovery demonstrated that with proper support, love, and justice, children could overcome terrible experiences and build bright futures filled with hope, trust, and joy.